Hey, welcome back to the pod. Last week, NBA draft took place. You might have saw our live reaction to that, where the Blazers drafted with the seventh overall pick, Donovan Clingan, after trading for Deni Avdija from the Washington Wizards. Today, each of us is going to give our thoughts about draft day, maybe grade draft day, grade Joe Cronin's performance on draft day. And the classic Joe Cronin, Chauncey Billups, Jody Allen video where they were talking to Donovan Clingan. That was kind of funny. What did you guys think about draft day for the Blazers? Colton, you're our draft expert. What is your big takeaways?
Yeah, I love in a draft where you have four picks, so you like go over all like the different possibilities, and then you end up drafting one player out of four. Uh, Going in, you knew that the Blazers didn't have a lot of roster spots available, so I don't know if people were
What
expecting.
with Delano Banton just demanding that roster spot?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but my point being, I didn't think they were going to use four picks, right? Like I expected them to use two at least, and they didn't. But I'm looking at the draft as like the transaction, the overall transactions that were made, right? So you picked up Donovan Clingan, who both you and Riley liked probably a little bit more than me going that route. I'm not the biggest fan of drafting a backup player the third time. Well, Scoot started some games last year, but Shaden's had to come off the bench as a seventh overall pick. Scoot had to come off the bench part of the time as the third overall pick, and now Donovan Clingan at this point is going to have to come off the bench as a seventh overall pick. And I know that he's your long term guy, he's your future. It's what it looks like, but I just don't love it. In the combine, he tested pretty slow. I know that the combine's not end all be all. He was a major part of winning two titles in college. He was the backbone of the defense. Um, and going out there and seeing him play and seeing like his tape and his highlights, there's some things to be excited about. But a lot of what people are really excited about is projecting him as a shooter, which he was a horrendous free throw shooter in college. And free throw shooting is kind of how your people usually project how shooting's going to go. So I don't love the free throw shooting. I mean, the form might be there, but you can see Dwight Howard hitting threes in practice all the time too, right? So I don't know. I'm still waiting to see on it. I'll give it a B because I do think that Klingon pick
Is that
because
in, does that include Deni Avdija?
no, that's just for Klingon. I think he
Oh.
was he was probably the best player available on the board overall without looking at fit. And I think you could argue with Buzelis being there, but he was definitely, a player that they coveted. So
If you were to include Deni Avdija in the draft day grade, what would that do
well, so
to you?
Deni Avdija, I like the move. And at first when you look at the name, you're like, not sure about it. But the more research you do into Deni Avdija, the more promising it gets.
Size, shooting.
His contract's descending. That's the biggest thing. When the cap is such an issue all the time with every team, if you get a guy who's improved every year and had a great year last year by all intents and purposes, only good player in Washington last year almost. Uh, I think that it was a good move to acquire him because he could be on the rise and his contract's on the decline, which is very rare. And then the other side of it is you look at what you gave up. So if you took the 14th pick, right, and you plugged in
Bub.
Deni Avdija there, well, just plug in Deni Avdija there. Like he's 23, he fits with the young core. Let's just say he was drafted there, right? Like a player with that skill set, we'd be excited. A young guy right there. And then finally, I know I'm taking up a lot of time here. The second round picks that you use to acquire him in the future, you got more back by trading a second round pick this year. You got three picks back. So it's like you didn't even lose any future second round picks. The first round pick that you lost in the future, you already have two other first round picks that year, and you kept yours and the better one. So I don't really have a problem with anything that was given up for Deni Avdija. I think it was a good move. So my grade's like a B plus, I'd say,
For draft day
for
altogether.
draft day. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to look at it holistically because if you just look at the Advia trade on its own, I wasn't really that excited about that. But then because I wanted to draft a wing, basically was my thinking. Like we went out and traded for a wing, and I was seeing wings on the board that I wanted us to draft a young, super talented wing. We talked about tons and tons of people over the last few weeks, and I was pretty committed to that idea. But in totality, the fact that we got a 6'9" guy, Buzelis would have been kind of redundant, honestly. He may have been having to come off the bench behind Avdija potentially, or they would have had like a battle. There would have been competing for minutes, no doubt about it. Especially as long as we have Jeremy still on the roster and then our 3-guard disaster that we're still trying to figure out. So I think that it made sense to go with Clingan, considering that we went out and got Avdija. Um, I think that it was a good move, and I mean I've been pretty excited watching him in practice, and I'm watching his attitude, and he seems like he's really committed. He seems like a good guy. I know that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, but Kirby and I have been talking about this over the last couple of days, and it just seems like he's got a strong personality. And I am kind of excited about the shot too. You mentioned the free throw thing, and I will say that free throws are not always representative of how good of a shooter the person's going to end up being. And you only need to look to exhibit number one being Luka Doncic, who is one of the best shooters the game's ever seen from the mid range and even from three, making insane shots, but he misses free throws all the time. So free throws and shooting can't
LeBron
be
is
different
another
things.
example of a weirdly bad free throw shooter.
Luka's
Yeah.
not shooting like 50% from the free throw line.
Sometimes Luka's not much better than that. I mean, he's like a 70 on a good night, but anyway, it's not necessarily representative. I do think that he looks like he's got a pretty sweet stroke. But I'm mostly interested in seeing him in the post, at which point him being a little slower isn't necessarily the end of the world, because we're going to hopefully have some long, quicker guys out to stop on the first level of defense. So in total, I think I'd give it probably a B plus as well. I thought it was a good showing. The only way maybe it could have gone better is if we had been able to trade up for someone even more exciting, maybe combine the picks, and if we were able to get the star guy in the draft somehow, maybe it would be a little bit more exciting. But I think that it was a good choice. It was a good decision. We took a good player with the 14th pick with the trade. And then based on who we got from that trade, I think we picked the right guy.
Yeah, going into the draft that day, ESPN had the Blazers taking Clingan at number 7, and I was pretty excited when I saw that. When you guys got here and we were setting up, I mentioned like, "Oh man, ESPN has this taken Clingan." I was pretty excited about that. In retrospect, I think maybe the only guy that was really in that range that I potentially would want more than Clingan is Saloon, but he went a pick ahead. Charlotte once again pulling the rug out from underneath the Blazers, picking up another big wing. But I do like Clingan. We a few months ago, probably 2 months ago, or maybe less than that, 6 weeks ago, something like that, we did a video titled "The Blazers Need to Draft the Next Bill Walton," and it was a memoriam for Bill Walton, Blazers legend. And I'm not saying Clingan is Bill Walton, that's ridiculous, but there are more dissimilar players out there than those two. Big guys can move the ball pretty well, can defend the rim, shot blockers, uh, pretty athletic. Walton was fast. He's a good job getting up and down the court. That remains to be seen with Clingan. But I think the biggest comparison is that they are both winners. I mean, Bill Walton was what, like a 3, 4 time national champion. I don't even know how many national championships he had at UCLA, but he was dominant his entire college career. Clingan 2 natties in college. He won a high school championship at Bristol in Connecticut. So, I mean, the dude is a winner. He makes winning plays, obviously, because he's been on a team that's won a lot of games. And I think the Blazers need a guy like that. I really don't know if there's anyone on the team that's won as much as he has. Scoot, I don't really think he won that much with the G League Ignite, Anthony coming from IMG Academy or whatever. I don't think he was really in a prestigious program like that. And so, if after a blowout loss one of these nights and Scoot and Aiton are dancing around and Shaden's on his phone or whatever, and Clingan's over in the corner with his towel over his head and head in his hands, and they're gonna be like, "Why are you upset, man?" He's like, "Because we lost." And that might change the culture a little bit. Like, oh yeah, we're supposed to not be happy after getting blown out by 30 to the Clippers or whatever. So I do like the potential attitude that he has as a guy who just knows how to win. Maybe he'll bring some of that to the Blazers. Obviously, the bigger thing though is the skill set, and I think his skill set also fits in, namely because I just don't think Aiton he doesn't play like Kling. They play very dissimilar in their games. Aiton's more of a stretch, and so maybe they could play together. And if they don't, I'd rather have a guy that plays like Klingan, that defends the hoop, plays at the rim, lob threat, all of the things that Aiton kind of refuses to do at this stage in his career. So yeah, I like the pick. It would be cool if they could play together though, because then you got a 7'2" guy and a 7-footer out there, one that can stretch the floor, one that could defend the hoop and dunk the ball and catch a lot of lobs. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. I agree he'll probably start by coming off the bench, but we'll see as the season moves on. A lot of room for experimentation this year for the Blazers, as it has been the last 3 or 4 seasons.
What's
I
your
think
grade?
Riley, did you give a grade? You gave a B plus. I'll give an A minus. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention Deni. I like Deni for many of the reasons that you guys did. I think experienced guy, not going to get a better player for the 14th pick. I think that there's like coming out of this draft, you got to imagine he's a top 5. Like if he was in this draft, he would be a top 5 player in this draft as it is. Obviously, there's ceilings and guys could improve and stuff like that. But I mean, at this stage, he's already a 14.7 rebound, 38% shooter, 3-point shooter. He's top 5 at least, maybe top 3 if you're comparing him to the guys in this draft. A minus.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair grade, and I think we at least need to try giving Aiton and Klingan some serious minutes together because I mean, what's the harm of trying that? Because it's probably not going to work to have him be the long-term backup center to Aiton as the starting center. Like, if Klingan is only ever that good, then we made a mistake. I just don't really see that happening, and Aiton is apparently excited to play with them, so like I would much rather see us at least try that lineup. They're very different players. DeAndre wants to be like a 7-something Aldridge. That's very much how he wants to play basketball. And I'm like, let's stop standing in his way then at this point. Stop trying to force the dude to play in the post. He hates it. He doesn't want to do it. He's miserable doing it. He complains about it constantly. Like let's let the guy go. Let the guy get outside the paint and float around a little bit. Shoot some shots. We've got someone else in there who can anchor, who can kind of hold things down, get some blocks at the rim.
Stretch it
Better
out a
than
few
Aiton.
more feet though, DeAndre.
But
Like
does he complain
give
about
it
it constantly though?
step back 4 more feet
When
instead of
does
the
he
long
when does he
twos. Please
complain
give me
about
a
it?
3.
He
When does
complains
he
about it in different ways. It's not like he's complaining to the media or anything. He's
doesn't
just
complain?
obviously unhappy.
He just doesn't play.
He
He
just
just
doesn't
chooses
play.
not to
He
play.
just he'll sit out games. So his injuries will take longer than they probably should to come back from. He's just
But
not happy doing it.
that's not the Blazers hold everybody out with fake injuries, and that includes DeAndre Ayton. That's
Do
not
you think DeAndre
DeAndre
Ayton
Ayton.
looked like he was like joyful playing basketball last year?
I think, yeah, if you watch down the stretch, he's the only guy that did.
In the games
Because
that
he was
didn't matter.
shooting. Because
Here's
he
the
was
issue
shooting.
with playing both of them.
Down the stretch, he
What are
was
we
not
trying to
playing in
do?
the paint.
He didn't need to play in the paint. He was efficiently scoring from everywhere.
This
Why?
is such a weird argument to make.
What
I
is
don't
the
understand the DeAndre not playing in the paint like
Yeah,
midweek.
well, why is it an issue if he scores efficiently? I don't understand.
I have no
Does he
issue.
have to play an antiquated 1970s back a guy down basketball? I don't get it.
Did
What's
you
the
hear what I said? I think that's great. I don't want him to have to play in the paint if he doesn't want to. I'm saying we finally got a guy who can play in the paint so that he doesn't have to, so that he
But
can shoot
he's
from
not
outside.
complaining, is what I'm saying. He's not whining about it. He's going out there and being the only guy that's scoring efficiently out there, playing his game. That's all
His
I'm saying.
his preference is not to play in the paint, and when we try to force him to play in the
Right.
paint, he isn't happy. He doesn't look happy. He doesn't want to be out there, and he plays less minutes.
He's not effective. I mean, who cares about his happiness? Is that he's not effective. He's not good. The team was dog shit the whole 2 months, 3 months, 4 months of the season, the first half of the season when he was, averaging like 11 points or whatever it was and is, hardly touching the ball in the games that mattered when the Blazers were actually trying to win games and not trying to tank.
I will
So
say
here's
he
the
did
issue
he
with
did complain about having to play in the post when he was in Phoenix. And so I'm maybe attributing some of that to Portland too. I just know he doesn't like it. He's made it very clear he doesn't like it, and I'm tired of trying to force the guy to play down there.
the issue with playing both him and Clingan together is this. If he doesn't move his range back, because he's a lights out mid range shooter, lights out, top 5 in the NBA, higher league shooting percentage from mid range. If he doesn't stretch his range out, this impacts other players' ability to develop because you're going to have people clogging the paint more so than any other team in the league. Go down the lineup. And if you don't have, well, you're going to have Simons probably starting at this point. Spoiler alert, he's still going to.
And Jeremy.
And Jeremy. Okay, but you go down the lineup of the players that you want to develop, is my point, with Scoot and Shaden, namely. You're not giving them room to grow if you have Clingan and Ayton in there and you got their guys clogging the paint. You need to have at least somewhat shooters, which this is what we talked about last season. How are players supposed to develop when the lane is so packed because you have a historically bad shooting team? So when you put those two guys in there, if Ayton's hitting threes, go ahead and give it a try. And then I don't see
That would be a game changer, man. That would be such a huge bonus, but I don't know if that's gonna just magically start happening. He never really has yet.
Then again, guess who started randomly shooting threes and shot it okay one season starting randomly?
Are you talking about Nurkic?
Nurkic, but also another guy, Brook Lopez. Brook
Really?
Lopez randomly started.
Oh,
He didn't shoot
shit.
any threes for like 6 seasons, and then he started
Oh,
just
man.
becoming Splash Mountain. So
That would be
it can
crazy.
happen. It can happen, but I'm just saying it's not very likely. And I just want to focus on development. I care about wins and losses, but this season I'm not all on board with wins and losses. I'm all on board with development. And so if players aren't able to develop because of this stupid win now moves that Chauncey Billups is making with the lineups and the rotations, that's when I get mad. And that's why
Like
I was
what?
last
What
season.
moves?
Here's an example. When Scoot has a mistake and he gets pulled, or if DeAndre Ayton and Clingan need to go in there because that's the best chance to win if they're not spacing the floor. No, focus on developing the players.
Another guy you want to develop though is Clingan, so you want to get him minutes as well, which either means him and Ayton are playing together or Ayton's riding the pine. Which of those would you rather? The lineup and the depth chart is a mess on the Blazers. It has been for so long. It's so confusing what route they're gonna go. Obviously, they need to trade some of these players out, and this is just another like two position problem kind of. I mean, maybe he'll come off the bench and be effective with the second unit. I mean, at this rate, it's either Scoot or Shaden is not going to be starting. So that means one of those guys is going to be coming off the bench with Clingan, and maybe those guys will play together, develop some chemistry together. But you'd like to see him start, ideally.
Yeah, to be clear, I do not think that Ayton and Clingan should play together because I think that's a win now move. It's because I want Clingan to develop. And I
Yes.
mean, if the team of our future is going to include Ayton, which I am not convinced of, but it seems like other people are, people in high positions of power seem to think Ayton's going to stick around for a few years. Then
This
he's
is the
gonna
same.
have to play with Clingan. He has to. Otherwise, one of them's got to go immediately. And so I want to
Maybe not
see if they
immediately.
can play together.
I
It's
mean,
not going to happen immediately. That's the issue that I had with even drafting a center because the Blazers are the expert in putting a high lottery pick off the bench. Apparently, they're the team that
any
does the most.
Any pick that they would have chosen though would be coming off the bench now. Saloon would be coming off the bench.
Zealous,
Buzelis would
zealous,
be
we'd have
coming
the
off the
same
bench.
problem with
There's
Avdija.
there's position clogs at every position for the Blazers right now. I don't really think that like drafting him was a big mistake because we have Aiton already or whatever. I think Aiton is in that same tier as Simons and Grant. I think that they're stopgap players that aren't going to be around for very long that the Blazers will move when they start to finally hopefully see some growth and development out of their real stars of the future. So I don't really buy that like drafting Clingan was a big mistake by the GM because of the position thing. Any player that would have drafted there, it would have been a problem as far as the depth chart goes. It's just
Well,
a mess.
if
They're in
everything
a
was
weird spot.
working as it should, in my opinion, Grant, would be gone. Like we've talked about this before. 2 out of the 3 we wanted out of
I
Brogdon,
think Aiton's
Simons, and
joining that list for me.
well now, yeah. The move has been made and now you're there. Yeah, you're gonna want to see that. So yes, the hand is where it is now. So I agree with you. But it wasn't before the draft. And now Robert Williams, you don't know what his health's going to give you. I think he's going to have to get packaged with one of these other vets, maybe, to a team that needs them. And you might have to wait till the trade deadline now because of how the dominoes are falling with free agency, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So,
talk a little bit about that. We were before the podcast, we were talking about the shipping Jeremy off to LA for Connect and a first, but that might not work out so well financially now with LeBron
yeah.
signing his 2-year deal.
So you look at, I mean, the suitors for guys like Simons and Grant were drying up with free agency. You were waiting to see where Clay was going. I think Jeremy was kind of the next tier after guys like Clay and after, even DeMar DeRozan's on there. He's still lurking. But Jeremy Grant would fit the Lakers to a T. The Lakers are the team that's kind of swung out after all the flurry of activity. And you want to go either all in on LeBron or rebuild, right? Well, wrong, because the Lakers are not giving away their picks and they are signing LeBron to an extension as a play-in team. And if his extension puts them at the
Speaking of a team that's an absolute mess.
I know. If so LeBron just signed an extension, and if that extension puts them at the second apron, what that means is the tax apron. They can't aggregate players in a trade. They can't aggregate salary to trade it for a player. So the Jeremy Grant trade would be very tough to pull off if they did put themselves at the second apron. But if not,
Wait, explain that again. Is that a new rule?
yeah. So it's basically to make it so where teams can't just keep spending a ton of money and going way over the salary cap and making all these moves. They put these restrictions down so you have to make decisions. And another Kevin Durant to the Warriors play can't happen, basically. And so it's a new rule coming into effect like now. And it's called, there's the first apron after it's the first tax line. Then there's that second tax line. And teams are not wanting to go into that second tax line because it restricts what you can do. So
you can't pair players to send to another team to match salary, basically.
You can't aggregate to meet the salary requirements. It's like one player is all you can trade at a time. So there's way more rules than that. But my point is that's kind of drying up because LeBron signed that extension. That it could still be there, but the free agency is tough for the Blazers because I think their best move would be either from trading Jeremy or Simons, but all the suitors are kind of drying up. So you might have to wait now, which is not what we want.
Quick sidebar, I thought this was kind of funny. Earlier today, I saw a headline that said Bronny signs 4-year Lakers contract, and I hovered over it, and it said 4 years, 79 million, and I was like, "What the?" I literally was like, "No fucking way!" And I clicked it, and it was 7.9 million, but the link, like, they couldn't put a point in the link, so it was like 4 years, 79. But 4 years, 7.9, that's a little bit more reasonable. So yeah, what is the next move for the Blazers? You think are there any moves to be made uh the rest of this summer, or is it just little tweaks here and there and this is the team going forward in the next season?
They have 15 roster spots, so they're not going to be signing free agents. And you guys said it, there's kind of bodies at every position right now, slightly more balanced than it has been in the past, right? There's a couple forwards. You got like 3 centers. You got 3 to 4 guards. they're kind of balanced right now. It's just a matter of hashing out who we
Who's
want.
the fourth guard?
Banton, your favorite, right? Better than Brandon Williams, I will say. And so we're gonna
What
see.
about CJ Ellaby? Can we bring him back?
Oh, no, no, no. I love the hair, but no. So yeah, that's just kind of it. The trade is going to be the way forward. We'll see.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really see anything happening because I think, like Colton said, the suitors have dried up. There's been a pretty decent amount of free agent activity and trades that have happened since the trade deadline, where a lot of teams have met their goals by either getting better or swapping things out or committing to a tank or whatever. And there's still some pieces waiting to fall that I think people are not going to make any moves until they go. Everybody's, still watching to see what's going to happen with a couple of star players. So, yeah, I don't really think the Blazers have any moves left to make this offseason, which means we're going to be looking at a weird log jam when we start the season. And again, the Blazers, Chauncey, is going to have to be making that decision about what kind of team we're trying to be. Are we trying to be a tank? Are we trying to be a competitive team? Are we trying to play these, 30-year-old star players? For what reason, I don't even know. Or are we developing our young guys? These are tough decisions that I know how I would play it, and it doesn't seem to be the way that management or the coaching staff wants to play it, which is disappointing. But we'll have to see how it goes.
Speaking of developing players, summer league coming up in a few weeks. You guys think both Scoot and Shaden gonna play?
Shaden won't. Scoot better.
Third year for Shaden. Probably, yeah. I don't know. You're pretty
I
sure he
would
won't?
I would love to just see Scoot and Clingan pick and rolls every single possession in summer league. I hope
Banton,
he at least plays 2 games.
it's gonna be a Banton like 25 shot a night
I
chuck
don't think
fest.
Banton's playing. I think it's going to be like Scoot, Repair, Klingon. Uh,
Kamara.
yeah, yeah.
That
Kamara,
could that team could end up being better than the team they put out for the regular season.
oh,
Because at least it's like they're on the same timeline and they're balanced in the right way. Whereas we're going to end up trying to play Scoot with Jeremy and all kinds of stuff that doesn't make any sense. Trying to develop chemistry that's not going to last more than a few months anyway. I have my concerns about this year. The only good thing is that the more we lose, potentially the better. But what I'm really worried about is that we're not going to lose enough. I'm afraid that we're gonna be playing the Jeremy DeAndre thing too much. And
Don't worry, Riley. We'll lose a lot.
Riley, what teams in the West are worse than the Blazers besides maybe Utah? I
Utah,
don't think
I
there's a
think that
single one.
Utah's better.
I know, but if Utah like trades Markkanen with Ainge being at the helm, it could happen. Other
Maybe.
than that, who's worse?
we'll see. There's a couple of teams that we still kind of need to see what happens. I think the Clippers might be in a world of hurt this year,
Maybe.
and maybe even
Yeah, Harden and
Phoenix,
Kawhi though. That's
depending
too.
on what. Yeah, but are they going
Yeah,
to
they
play?
can't tank either. They don't own their pick. They traded it to the Thunder. The Thunder don't.
That's the thing. They're going to be
The
trying
Thunder
to
got
win. The Blazers will not be trying to win.
But are they
the
going to
Thunder
play?
got J-Dub from the Clippers pick.
What?
You know that the Thunder got J-Dub from a Clippers
I
pick.
was just looking at the Paul George the deal that was made, and now he's gone for nothing. Man, that was a terrible trade. Oh, that reminds me of some Brooklyn Nets trades from a few years ago. All
Yeah,
right.
and now
And what's
With
going to happen in Phoenix? I mean, I really don't know. I'm not saying that they're going to be a bottom dweller next year. They're probably going to be competing, in that kind of middle of the conference like they have been. But I do worry a little bit about what their setup is because I know that they've been, they know that it doesn't work with the three guys. But is it going to be that much better with the two guys? I mean, who do you bring in if you are able to ship one of them out? I don't know. I just don't have that much faith in KD at this point in his career. He'd have to have the right guys around him, and I don't think they built the team for that. So I
let's
don't know
talk
what happens there.
let's talk about some of the big free agent signings though, some of the big moves, namely Paul George to the Sixers, Klay Thompson to the Mavericks. Some of the talking heads on ESPN were saying that Philadelphia is now Boston's like biggest threat. what world are we living in where Paul George and Joel Embiid have garnered any like
Faith.
faith for a playoff run? Playoff P and Joel,
I
like,
do think Tyrese Maxey as the engine for them is good, but there's gonna be a lot of nights when Tyrese Maxey is the only out of those three guys playing. That's the
and yeah, and when the other two guys are on the floor, they need their shots. I feel like Paul George is going to be taking away a lot of ball handling, decision making, and shot taking from Maxi. I don't know if that helps him that much. He's so street that the dude just has not really done much as of late. And I mean, like statistically, his career is impressive, but I was thinking like since his 2011 Pacers run, what has the dude really done? A few Clippers runs that maybe made it to the Western Conference Finals, but yeah, I don't really understand why the media is so high on that pairing and Paul George in particular.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I do think that the Knicks, man, they could give the Celtics just their way that they're built, not on offense like scary, but on defense, wow.
One problem there, I think, is losing Hartenstein could hurt. They kind of got small all of a sudden. They have Mitchell Robinson, and that's about it in the as far as bigs go. OG, he's probably going to play their power forward, and he's not really. He's what, maybe 6'7"?
They need Robert Williams.
Yeah. What do you like from New York coming back for vet for one of those, a Simons Grant, Robert
Just
Williams,
give me a pick, Knicks. That's all I would like. I don't know if that's even feasible, but
Deuce,
they need a center.
Deuce McBride,
No, don't want
another guard.
don't want it.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
we got Clay to the Mavericks, the Warriors dynasty disintegrating. Colton, you talked about that a few weeks ago when we were debating whether or not we wanted the Warriors pick this year or next year. You thought they were going to continue to downhill slide. And their big announcement after losing Klay Thompson, Kyle Anderson, 3 years, 30 million. So I feel like that franchise isn't in vogue anymore. I don't think players really want to go play there. I don't really think they have the assets and the structure to get Steph the help he needs I mean, he's older, but he's still, you gotta say he's top five, top 10 player in the league. I mean, I would say top five. And then Clay is fit in Dallas. I mean, I think another shooter would have helped them out a lot, helping space the floor. I think that was maybe one of their biggest problems in the playoffs was that they just didn't have, they had defense and size with PJ and DJJ, but they didn't have that shooter. Does Clay come off the bench? He probably starts.
He takes DJ's spot.
Yeah.
But is Clank Thompson at this stage of his career really?
0 for 12 in an elimination game.
I mean, he might just take a reset and come in and just if theoretically his fit on the offense is really good.
Yeah.
He's the shooter guy that can just roam around and shoot off wide open feeds from Luka or Kyrie. And also he's got size, but he's just toast on the defensive end. I don't know, man.
Riley, I know you want to talk, but I just wanted to make one more point and then I'll throw it to you. I did see a stat that Klay Thompson, he averaged like 17 points on like 37% shooting from three. And then coming off the bench, he averaged like 19 and a half points on like 43% shooting from three. So, and that was at the end of the season. So I don't know if it was the bench move necessarily or something clicked later in the season, but his numbers definitely did improve until he went 0 for 12 in the elimination game.
Yeah, I think that Clay makes a lot of sense in Dallas. As soon as I heard that as a potential landing spot for him, I immediately thought that I could see that in my mind. They're already a pretty slow team. They play pretty, especially on the offensive end. They definitely like to get into their sets. And his ability to just create space for the ball handler guy, the guards that they have could be a big deal. The guy is a knockdown shooter. That's not going away. He's not going to be the same off-ball movement guy that he has been in the past, and he's not going to be the defensive stopper that he has been in the past. But if he can just sit in the corner and be the spacer guy, I mean, can you really get a much better like corner three guy than Clay? I mean, he's one of the greatest shooters the NBA's ever seen, and you get him on your team at a deal, by the way. They were offering him less money than other teams, and he took it because he wanted to go there. So I think that it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the defense should be a problem, but they have a lot of defenders on that team to switch in and out with them, so it should work. Thanks everyone for watching. We got to tune out now, so we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.